How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. Ben here, joined by Michael, as I so frequently am, to do should be a relatively quick video, short, tight discography. Alice in Chains, one of the big four of grunge. If you buy that whole big four argument, I find those kind of reductive, but a pretty good band. Definitely was a fan of their '90s output, but most of the new stuff was completely new to me. And now glad that I've heard their stuff in its entirety. It's pretty good overall. But you want to go ahead and lead off with your number six, Mike?
Yeah, I'm my number six was The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. It just feels like they got caught up in the post-grunge movement. It feels very generic. I mean, there's a couple of decent songs on here, like Hollow. But overall, it was always going to be number one because it always felt like a weak record to me. So Devil Put Dinosaurs Here is number six.
I debated that one, but I ended up surprisingly enough going with Facelift at the bottom of my list, number six from 1990. It's unusual that I put a debut at the bottom. Usually those are near the top or at the top for me. Most of the stuff we've done at this channel. The tone and the style is definitely pretty well realized for a band's debut. But my main issue with this record is that it's a little fatiguing over 55, 60 minutes of very similar, comparable song structures and chords and all that stuff. As good as some of them are, specifically We Die Young and Man in the Box, over the course of a whole record, I did kind of get a little tired of it by the end of the record. But definitely not a bad record, but I can't say that it's great. So my number six, probably the most controversial pick on my list. I'm putting Facelift at the bottom.
So my number five is Rainier Fog, their most recent album. It's kind of the same as Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. I find the output is overall a bit weak, but I will say the songs are definitely stronger on this. Deaf Ears, Blind Eyes, Rainier Fog, and then Red Giant are all really quality songs. It's not as good as their '90s output, but it is very clearly better than Devil Put Dinosaurs Here in my mind. So that's where it's number five.
All right, well, you mentioned it, but Devil Put Dinosaurs Here from 2013 is at the bottom of my list as well. I put it at number five, though I could probably be convinced to flip those bottom two. If it sounds like we're doing this fast, it's because we are, because this is the third time now we've sat down to shoot this video. Michael, I appreciate you donating so much of your time to my various fuck ups and recording and gear and all that stuff. We had to do this video now for the third time, so regardless, to the record. Yeah, it was a toss up. It definitely is pretty good overall. There's some good moments. Noticeably, what I think put this one a little bit above Facelift was there is a bit of a variety across this track list. There's some slower acoustic stuff mixed in with the real beefy, diminished, distorted stuff that they're famous for. Again, it's a pretty tiring listen at 70 plus minutes. I really felt like it could have used a trim. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit better than Facelift just by virtue of the variety, even though it is still just too long. And I don't like the album art very much with just the red dinosaur skull. I thought that was kind of crappy.
Yeah, it's garbage. I don't like it at all. It looks
Yeah,
like if Queens of the Stone Age was terrible at making album art.
yeah.
Um, my number four is Facelift. I think part of the problem is the fact that while there's some good harmonizing on there, I wish there was more with Jerry Cantrell. I mean, Lane Staley's a good singer, but Jerry Cantrell puts it in this extra gear for me. We Die Young is a really strong opener. Bleed the Freak is really cool. Love Hate Love is I like that it's a bit of a departure from what they usually talk about. This one's about an abusive relationship instead of just like doing drugs and feeling sad overall. I think it's definitely the heaviest album in my mind. It's closest to metal, which makes me a little bit surprised on why it's your number six. But yeah, no, it's a clear number four for me.
I had to give number four to Black Gives Way to Blue, 2009, their comeback record, and it is a pretty good comeback record. Listening to these chronologically, as I tend to do, as I think you do as well, this one really stood out because there was a good gap there between their third, I think it was, and their fourth, right? So 13 or 14 years between studio projects, production quality has come a long way, and you can hear it immediately. This is actually produced by a guy named Nick Raskulinets, I think is how you say his name. And I've mentioned him on this channel a couple times now, I think, in reference to his work with some of the later stuff by the Foo Fighters and Rush, and he's worked with Code Orange, Coheed and Cambria. A lot of really good sounding records, just dense, gritty, good hard rock records. And it sounds great here. The music's good. Notably, the album art's better this time around. They didn't put a dinosaur on there. And this was the first one where I hadn't actually heard any of the new stuff of the newer three. And it's off to a pretty good, little sludgier, a little heavier. Overall, I thought this was pretty good, but I felt that there was three that were obviously better in my mind.
So my number three was the self-titled Alice in Chains. It's definitely, it feels bluesier than the other two records that came before it. Um, I just, the harmonizing is there in pretty much every song, which I love. The opening track, Grind, is a great tone setter. Frogs is a really cool 8-minute track. That's the thing about this record. There's a lot of really long songs on there.
Yeah.
Sludge Factory, and Heaven Beside You is probably the most notable track from it. And it's the last, obviously, one that Lane Staley did while he was alive.
Legend that he is, probably the him or Cobain's got to be the best vocalist of the grunge era. Just such distinctive, charismatic presences and deliveries and all this stuff. Yeah, the opener, Grind, picks up right where Dirt left off. Dirt probably going to be number one for both of our lists just by virtue of its reputation and how much we liked that album before going into this. But this was good too. Head Creeps is a personal favorite of mine. I'd totally forgotten about that song, but when I went back and listened to it, I was like, you know what, this is just like an awesome, jammy, sort of heavy song. I appreciate the tone of this album in reference to Dirt because it's less outright aggressive and more has sort of like this consistent, sort of menacing presence, even in its slower sections. You hear the first appearance of like that almost bluesy, twangy, southern acoustic but heavy sort of sound that they revisit every once in a while across their discography here. And it's very welcome. It adds a little bit of variety to a track list that's dominated by pretty similar songs. Shame in You, Brush Away, pretty good. Sludge Factory, excuse me, is not my absolute favorite, but it is heavy as hell, and it's a good spot in the track list as well. We're up into the stuff now where I'm like, these are great records. It's just a matter of which one you like better. So number three, and great album art as well. Love the Three-Legged Dog album art.
Yeah.
Number three for me, the debut from '95, or not the debut, the self-titled from '95.
Yeah. So my number two is Black Gives Way to Blue, their comeback album. Look, I like the fact that on All Secrets Known, they immediately acknowledge that Lane's not there and it's a new era, but they're still caring about him. Check My Brain, the lead single, is super groovy. I love that it's just about Jerry Cantrell's move to LA. It's a lot simpler of a message than a lot of their other tracks. Last of My Kind is the only William Duvall who replaced Lane Staley. It's the only specifically his written song and the only one that only his vocals are on. So I like that they limited him a little bit, especially to ease back in. And then Black Gives Way to Blue at the end of the record about clearly Lane Staley is a nice ballad, and it's a great closer.
Yeah. He does do a good job taking over from the mantle of a legendary grunge vocalist, does Duvall. I think he does a good job. They definitely have that. It's a combination of melodic choices and harmonic choices with the vocal delivery that they have. It's a very distinctive sort of style that's recognizable as theirs. And I was surprised just how well he does it. Obviously, Staley did it a little bit better, I would say, but he might even say that if he was being honest. But yeah, he does a great job. Number two for me, the surprising pick on my list, perhaps, given how low you put it and most fans would put it. Rainier Fog, number two from 2018. I just really enjoyed this record. I didn't expect to like any of the new stuff quite as much as I did, and I thought this was the best of the new stuff. I feel like it achieves the ultimate compromise between their various stylistic influences. You got the little sludgy and doomy metal sounds mixed in with some traditional grunge, maybe even a little post-grunge in terms of the melodic choices and the melodies here. Some catchy songs, a little bit complex structurally compared to some of their other stuff as well. I thought it sounded fantastic. Production as well, fantastic. The one So Far Under, Never Fade, the title track. I thought fantastic record, about the right length. I was surprised just how much I liked this. And obviously, you now know what my number one is and what probably yours is going to be as well. But this was one where I was like, you know what, I'm probably got to pick this up now. I'd skipped over it entirely when it came out, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so my number one is Dirt. It was always going to be Dirt. I mean, it's
Mine too.
just it kicks off with Them Bones, a song about death. I think Rain When I Die is a pretty ridiculous song. It's pretty heavy, and when they hit the chorus, love that. Rooster, probably the standout track from this album in terms of mainstream appeal. It's a 7 minute, song about the Vietnam War and Vietnam veterans. You have Junkhead, which is pretty solid about addiction. Uh, it's a lot. It's a heavy album. It's a sad album, and it's not something I'm going to listen to constantly because of how heavy it is. But I really like this album. I think it's clean, almost completely front to back. Sans a handful of tracks. Yeah.
So dense, this album, both
Oh yeah.
both thematically and tonally and stylistically, and it's just it's crushing, which is probably what they were going for in a lot of the songs. Like you could mention more than half of the track list as classics for the band and for that era. You mentioned "Rain When I Die." What a vocal performance by Lane Staley there, arguably his best and one of my personal favorites. And then you have Rooster, you have "Down in a Hole," you have "Godsmack," "Them Bones." Godsmack, you had the unfortunate side effect of spawning a very subpar imitator in the form of the band Godsmack, but we can't lay that at the feet of Staley and the boys. That's an unintended side effect. Yeah, this is their most consistent record in terms of just achieving what it achieves perfectly. This is the Alice in Chains sound in a nutshell. This is why they have a lasting reputation as just the sheer quality and impactfulness, if that's even a word, of this record. Some very great album art as well. I'm an album
Oh yeah.
art guy. Love the album art. It was always going to be my number one when I went into this. Despite how much I enjoyed some of the newer stuff, this was obviously like, dude, they're not going to have a better one than Dirt
Right.
hiding in the wings. I would have heard of it by now. So yeah, that one we knocked that out real quick. I think we're both a little impatient to get it done after so many stops and starts on recording.
Yeah, and I'm not feeling good, so I'm like, let's just get it
Yeah.
done.
No, I
So
appreciate you knocking it out with me, buddy. And it's your pick next. Where do you want to go?
let's do System of a Down. I think they only have like 5 records or so. So
Yeah.
let's do that.
System of a Down. That should be a quick one to knock out. We'll be back with that shortly. Mike, as always, appreciate you doing these with me. There's a lot of fun, and look out for System of a Down. Worst to best next.